Very, very warm welcome today, whether it's raining or beautiful, wherever you are. Welcome to today's webinar looking at sustainability in typically non-green degrees. So I'm Gail Capper and I'm responsible for insight and research within Pearson's International Higher Education Division. I'm joined by Jen O'Brien, who's our lead for the Let's Talk community and the series of webinars that we're doing. She's based at the University of Manchester. She's the academic lead for sustainability, teaching and learning, among her many other roles, I should say. As everyone will know, you don't just have one role, there's many, many things that you're doing. So yeah, we're delighted to welcome you wherever you are. I hope we don't talk too quickly. I'm aware that English might not be your first language, so I hope that you're able to follow us. Our sign-ups actually were incredible. So we've had sign-ups from everywhere: Netherlands, Sweden, Mongolia, Japan. I want to thank you for joining us and being interested in this topic. We're really excited to talk to you either today or when you're managing to catch up. Right, so I will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions that come up, I will be looking at that and I will bring those in at the end of the conversation. If we have time, if we don't, we'll probably take those offline and follow up after the session. I just want to very quickly introduce everyone who's sitting here today to our wonderful panellists. So I'll move on from Jen, but first of all, I'd like to introduce Dr. Vili Papageorgiou, who is a pedagogy lead for the delivery of an institution-wide curriculum design review programme at the University of Surrey. And Vili teaches on the PG Cert in Learning and Teaching in Higher Education. She's also a personal tutor on the MA in Higher Education. So welcome. We also have with us Charlene Gallery, who is a reader working at the University of Manchester's Department of Materials. So she is the employability lead connecting students with industry. And her research largely focuses, if I'm right, on social activism in fashion and digital fashion sustainability. So welcome. And Dr. Kath Heinemeyer is based at York St John's, and she co-convenes the Ecological Justice Research Group. She also coordinates York St John's Living Lab, and that's a project which engages students in ecological justice issues locally. We have Fariha Agar, who is a public health student at the University of Manchester, and to whom we're incredibly grateful for joining and providing her perspectives on including sustainability in teaching. I'll just point out the obvious. Quite unusually, we have no men on our panel today, and I should reassure you that's not by design. That is totally accidental and was due to availability. So just wanted to point that out, because I'm sure if it was a panel of men, we'd be wondering why there weren't any women on the panel. Right, so if that's everybody, I haven't left anybody out. I'm going to hand over to Jen to lead the conversation largely today, being such an expert in the area. But I wanted to take the moment and ask, can I just ask each of you a very general question? Why is sustainability important to you? And whoever wants to take that first, please go ahead.
That's quite a massive one. I think possibly I might speak for all of us in saying that we've now lived our entire lives knowing that we're in a climate emergency. The government of the UK and other governments around the world might have only declared that a few years ago, but we've known that our whole lives, and we've known our whole lives that that's going to affect whatever subject we go into or sector we go into, and it's going to affect us as citizens and members of our communities. So for a lot of people probably in the chat as well, this is something they've been trying to find roots into all their working lives, perhaps.
I'll go next then. So I'm a little bit of a hybrid academic. I started out in the fashion industry, worked as a product developer and designer for many years, initially working for Ralph Lauren. Then I moved across into what we call mass market fashion or high street fashion. Obviously in the UK we call it high street fashion, but generally, universally, it's mass market fashion. So even though I was working across kind of premium and low-level markets, I really saw a little difference in the way that not only the way fashion products were produced, but the way raw materials were sourced, the amount of samples we'd produce for each garment, and most importantly, the environmental and the ecological and the human cost of manufacturing apparel. And obviously moving into education now about 15 years ago, and obviously being, you know, part of the e-commerce rise over the past 10 years, this cycle, this machine, if you will, has only just become worse. And we've now moved from, you know, 4 seasonal collections over a year, what it used to be, to 52 micro seasons, which means that new products are essentially pushed into the market every single week. And as we know, or maybe you don't know, but most clothing that we wear is made from virgin fossil fuel-based synthetics, so polyester, nylon, acrylics, which doesn't biodegrade easily once disposed of, if at all. It just lays in landfill for ever more. And obviously, you know, we know that we need to disrupt the existing system if we're going to essentially, you know, protect the planet, save the planet, protect the people, and not just people, but all living organisms within our planet. You know, we need to make sure that from an educational standpoint, but from a research standpoint, that we're actually looking at ways in which we could realistically do that. So obviously sustainability for me is important because it's about making sure that, you know, we're not you know, overly extracting natural resources from the planet, but making sure that there's a less, you know, divide between the global south and the global north, making sure that the wealthy nations are held accountable for, you know, protecting the planet. And, you know, yeah, I mean, obviously, we know some of the statistics behind the industry as well. So obviously, I'm just conscious that we need to be doing more work, more realistic and meaningful work to change the fashion system, essentially.
Thank you, Shannon. Faria, can we come to you as well, please, as our student here? So why is sustainability, you're a student in public health, and we'd really value knowing why. I know I'm privileged to work with you, and you do incredible work in and around sustainability, but why is it particularly important to you?
Yeah, so I think originally I kind of got into sustainability kind of through like a normal route. Like I just kind of read the news and things. I wasn't studying it at any level. It's not a big part of my degree right now either, but I kind of just got interested through reading about it and kind of realizing the impacts. And it's one of those where the more you read into it from a non-green kind of background, you realize it affects literally everything, and especially studying public health, kind of the effects of the climate crisis on people's health, and especially people who are already kind of affected by health inequalities, is really, really important. And I feel like it's very overlooked. I know that for me, on my degree, I feel like it's quite overlooked, and it seems to be kind of an industry niche that isn't shouted about as much as other areas, which is a real shame. And that's kind of where I want to try and go into once I graduate. And it's one of those where sustainability, kind of the way I see it, is the only way you can kind of mitigate those impacts. And what I really love about it is that it's everybody's responsibility. It's not one person does this, one person does that, and then you've kind of fixed the problem. It's very much kind of, as Charlene was saying, it's everybody's responsibility, and it filters into every single industry as well, which I think is really powerful because it gives everybody the opportunity to get involved, and it makes it everybody's responsibility as well. So yeah, I think overall it's kind of important because it's something that is going to affect everybody, already affects a massive range of people. And especially in terms of like health inequalities, it's just going to deepen them, and they're already, at least in the UK, very clear. And even the effects, kind of like as you were mentioning, like the global south as well, kind of the impacts from the climate crisis are really important. So that's kind of why sustainability is important to me.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And Billy, last but absolutely not least, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure whether I will be able to follow up on these brilliant ideas. I would like to say that I'm a newcomer in the area of sustainability, so I don't have any degree, or I have not done any specific formal training in sustainability, but it's a topic that I'm very interested in. So obviously when I started engaging with this area because of my current role at the University of Surrey as the curriculum design review lead, I accessed some key definitions to build my confidence around what sustainability is and why it is important to us. So basically, based on the definition, it's the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So as an educator and as a person who teaches the teachers how to teach, I think that I have a core responsibility in educating our colleagues, but also our students on how to make responsible decisions that will not affect negatively the future generations. So it's about empowering colleagues and making them aware, cultivating some key values that align with sustainability to ensure that we make the best possible ethical decisions for the present, but also the future. So that would be my response. Thank you. But also just to say that I'm a school teacher by background, and when I was reflecting on the concept of sustainability, I think that naturally in school education, we do include lots of practices that align with sustainability. For example, role modeling behaviors that are inclusive, and also reading books and storytelling with ideas that align with sustainability, reusing materials, and I think it's a lot of the things that we were doing in school education, in primary education specifically, really align with primary education. So that was my basis to understand the importance of sustainability, and then transition to higher education and try to unpack how we can design activities and empower colleagues to think about sustainability and also inform their actions as well.
What an absolutely incredible panel we have today of rich experiences, rich backgrounds, and really intriguing opportunities to bring that together. And if I may, there's some fantastic questions, but also resources being shared in the chat as well. Please do keep going. I mean, I am a greenie. I'm a geographer by training. I work particularly in the Sustainable Development Goals. We can critique those another time. But for me, sustainability is all about partnership. And I think we absolutely have to bring together the multi-scalar, multi-actor, different approaches and share the resources that we have. So very honoured to bring this panel together today. And please do keep sharing any great ideas that you may have in the chat. From that basis, can I ask then, please, how you started to bring sustainability into your teaching and learning? And this is the point today of having a group of people who you wouldn't immediately think, oh, you work in sustainability, you're sort of around those edges, you've all done incredible things in your spaces. Faria, I think it's really amazing how you immediately leapt in with questions of wanting to learn more about sustainability and public health, particularly around inequalities. So how did you do it then? Who should I go to first? Kath, would you mind picking up? How did you start on your journey of bringing sustainability into your teaching and learning?
Well, at York St John, we're a small university and we know each other across disciplines. So I have friends who are lecturers in lots of disciplines. I'm a drama lecturer. That's my discipline, which is not an obvious one, perhaps, either. And the group of us did some research into what our students expect from the university in terms of helping them face into the climate and ecological emergency, and all the justice issues it raises and all the anxieties it raises. And through all that research with students from all across the university, we discovered several really interesting things. One was that our students had a really pretty high level of understanding already of those situations. We didn't really need to explain the basics of climate change to them. I've seen some really interesting questions about that in the chat. Another was that they felt really daunted and really overwhelmed by it. So when it came to project work, they preferred to often choose a subject that felt more manageable, like something they could hold in their hands, whereas the climate or ecological emergency felt like a massive beast that they didn't even know where to start with. So what they were kind of asking for in that research was for staff to walk alongside them and to investigate these issues, but how they manifested really locally. So where are these issues on campus? Where are they here in York, in our city? What are the solutions, like beyond just recycling and those individual things? What can I as a linguist, or I as a primary educator, or I as a psychologist, or whatever my subject is, what can I bring to that, my skills to that? And please walk with me on that and guide me in who's doing good work in this stuff locally. So we've decided to, it's really interesting that Villy talks about primary education, because I would say that our Living Lab is basically primary topic-based learning for adults. So we choose one topic at a time, and we ask, well, what can the different disciplines bring to that? We did air quality, then we did the campus food system. In the campus food system, business students could bring their investigations into the campus, the ethics of our supply chain, and performance. My drama students could make a performance for a network of local community organisations about their efforts to develop a community gardening hub. And linguists could analyse the discourses that people use to talk about food and look into the trade-offs between cost of living and sustainability. Everybody had things to bring, and then we could collaborate with our brilliant professional services staff like catering and estates, who are already doing really good work and who already want to use local sustainable suppliers. And we could give them courage and power by amplifying the student voices that were demanding those. So that was where we started from. People don't really need too much more knowledge about the issues. They want to know how can they use their subject to contribute to the solutions locally, all working together. And we needed to support each other in that. Yeah. So that's how we got started.
Amazing, Kath, thank you. And Charlene, you were nodding away there. Is there anything you wanted to come in on?
No, I think it's similar to Kath, really, in terms of how we're embedding sustainability within our programme. We felt within our department, we don't teach design as such, we teach more the business management side of fashion. So obviously ops management, marketing, etc., fashion technology. So what we did originally was start to just look at our units that make up our programme, and we found that whilst we did have some optional units that were focused on understanding ethical fashion practices and sustainability, sustainability as such was viewed as something you opt in for, rather than it being the main focus and something that's embedded across every single unit from day one into the programme. And then obviously we're just building on that knowledge right the way through the programme. So what we did, we worked with industry, and we engaged with industry to really understand where the challenges are for sustainability implementation and adoption, and how and really started to map that back to our programme to make sure that we're embedding and equipping the students with the relevant skills, that they have that solid understanding of sustainability and sustainable practice, but also that they understand that there are challenges, in the industry. It's not perfect, it's nowhere near perfect, but we wanted our students to view themselves as potential disruptors of that current status quo, but obviously they needed to understand the what and the why of what they were learning and why they were learning, and subsequent obviously impacts of that. So what we did, we initially developed 4 pillars of our programme, fashion, business and technology. So we were thinking about the essential core skills that we wanted to shape our students' professional identities, as you will. So these pillars were obviously sustainability. So we looked at the 4 pillars of sustainability, from environmental, social, economic and culture. But we also wanted to make sure that we're embedding digital innovation in there, because we do feel like sustainability goes hand in hand with digital innovation. We wanted to make sure that students were understanding corporate social responsibility and inclusive practice from an EDIA perspective as well, about the human side and the social side of sustainability and inclusion, and obviously professional kind of transferable skills as well. So then we mapped out how we integrate these 4 pillars across the entire programme. So looking at the differences in terms of teaching and learning approaches that we could embed, so it wasn't the same thing that students were learning in every single unit. It was something more diverse and something more evolving and scaffolding, so they're building on those skills as they progress through the degree. So students, so for example, in the first year, students learn about supply chain management. So they were exploring how clothes are made, for example, and they're critically encouraged to evaluate current fashion practices, particularly from a fast fashion kind of market level. So this is typically a huge eye-opener for students. We have so many, students from all walks of life, from different countries, and what we see as a common thread is that they don't understand they don't realise the extent of the damaging environmental and social impacts of the fashion system that they want to work within. So the purpose of that unit is for students to investigate more sustainable approaches across the supply chain. So they're looking at across all 4 tiers, from tier 4, so where raw materials are extracted from and made, where materials are processed, right the way through to where and how the garments are made. We also show students documentaries, really fantastic documentaries like The True Cost, or The Next Black, which really opens their hearts and their minds up to understanding the maybe the juxtaposition of the glamorous facade of fashion, in that we know the fashion shows and the marketing ad campaigns, against the catastrophic impacts of the fashion system. And we also understand that obviously, like I said, digital innovation is obviously a key element of sustainable adoption as well within our particular industry. So, for example, our final year students, we run a number of live industry projects with a number of fashion brands, really looking at how fashion practices can be disrupted, but obviously we're not talking about completely dismantling the fashion cycle. It's really about how change can happen internally. Because if change needs to happen, but it's something that can be from within, rather than kind of burning the whole house down and trying to, start again. It's something that needs to be embedded and integrated in a realistic viewpoint and approach. So it's really looking at how companies can become more agile, more sustainable, but also how we can reduce the amount of consumption and waste that we're consuming across the globe, for example. So that's how we've started to embed like sustainable practice from a program level perspective.
Amazing, thank you, Charlene. I'm writing down keywords here that I'll share later, and I've got a fantastic array of different points here. Farah, I'm going to come to you in a second if you don't mind. Billy, may I ask you to pick up there? Because I know you've done a lot of work around supporting colleagues to bring sustainability into their teaching and learning. And there's some really interesting questions in the chat. And I very much agree, we are a self-selected sample of greenies, even if we're not obviously green. And there's a few things that have come up already around the questions of courage and walking alongside students. And could you just share with us a little bit, please, about how you have supported colleagues to bring sustainability into their teaching and learning? Thank you.
Sure, thank you for this question. So I'm going to give a little bit of context of my work. So the University of Surrey, the university had created a framework to guide the curriculum design review program. And that framework consisted of 5 pillars, one of which was sustainability. So when I entered this role involved a lot of workshops with program teams to think about these 5 areas of the curriculum design program. And I had to upskill myself a little bit because, as I said, I'm not a person who has expertise specifically in sustainability. So what I did to upskill myself before I entered these workshop spaces with colleagues was to do some self-exploration. So I accessed some relevant frameworks. Of course, the SDGs is the most popular one, but then Advanced AG and the Quality Assurance Agency had also created some very accessible resources that emphasized the role of competencies for sustainability, and they had categorized the competencies based on 3 areas, these of thinking, practicing, and being, which is from UNESCO's framework that was developed, I think, at some point in 2017 or something like that. So gathering all of this information from frameworks and things like that, I started building a little bit confidence. But obviously, as I said, because I'm not an expert on sustainability, it was really critical to find colleagues within the university who have this relevant expertise. So there was a colleague who had specifically expertise on sustainability, and she had a more holistic understanding of sustainability, not necessarily on any of the 3 pillars separately, but a more holistic understanding of sustainability. And she had created some resources for staff to guide them. So these resources included digestible information, such as, for example, what is sustainability? So a kind of a simple definition. And then some prompt questions to support teams to think about how to integrate sustainability in the various contexts and disciplines. As you can understand, these were fairly generic, but they were directing colleagues to think about key components, such as, for example, how to think interconnectedly, not only thinking about specific SDGs, because I guess all of us could map our discipline against a specific SDG, for example. So these were quite useful. And also she had created some flashcards that basically provided ideas on what the teacher does around sustainability and what the student does. So she had created some approaches that aligned with sustainability, such as, for example, the approach of living labs that Jen and colleagues are very familiar with, problem solving, bringing in experts in sustainability to connect sustainability within specific disciplinary contexts and things like that. So what we did as part of the curriculum design program was we had a very large mapping activity where we asked colleagues to consider the integration of these 5 areas, including sustainability. And then what was really useful was that they had discussions with colleagues belonging to the same program team, and they were able to exchange views, including sustainability. So some of the modules and programs had already included sustainability in their in what they do. So that was a great opportunity to exchange ideas. Now, in terms of our practices, what we did was we introduced some CPDs, and we brought colleagues from different disciplines together. And as I said, we included both kind of introductory information about definitions and frameworks, but we had also designed an activity where we asked colleagues to work in groups and design specifically activities about sustainability. So that was quite useful, because then colleagues from different disciplines brought their ideas together and they created some interesting activities. And then these resources that were created as part of this workshop were circulated across our community as well. This is what we have done more or less at SARI, and I think a very useful project that was part of the curriculum design program was that there was an opportunity for teams to partner with students and do student-staff partnership projects, and some colleagues from disciplines who are not, as Jen said, green, they opted for using this project to think about how to integrate sustainability with students. So then students' role in some projects was to do some desk research, find some case studies, find some key themes within specific disciplines, and give these ideas to academic staff, and then co-create some activities together and some assessments as well. In other cases, it was a case of examining what sustainability is in specific contexts, and then trying to create specific assessments and evaluation mechanisms as well. For example, surveys that specifically track how students engage with sustainability and what's their key takeaway messages from a module, for example. So the students' role was this of co-researchers, if you like, to explore the learning that has happened in a specific module and specifically examine the intervention or an activity or an assessment that was linked to sustainability and how effective was this for students. I had also the privilege to, I mean, I'm mindful of the time and don't want to take all of this time, but I have also created 2 modules. As I said, I'm a newcomer, so these are currently at the design stage, but I have actively integrated sustainability from a design perspective. So one of them, the topic is, as Charlene said, I think I quite like the intersection between digital technologies and sustainability, and the theme of futures as well. So in that module, I have considered, I will ask students to select an education future scenario and then analyze the impact of this scenario in relation to the SDGs, in relation to the society, and at different levels. So this encourages students to think at the future and how a specific technology, let's say artificial intelligence, or another scenario, for example, hybrid learning, may impact students' learning, but also the impact of this scenario across different levels, that encourages systems thinking and future thinking as well. So this kind of integration, I think it's quite useful, because it's not all about giving the knowledge or engaging students with specific content areas, but it engages them throughout the whole module, and it's also part of the assessment. So a key component that we actively encourage our colleagues to do is also think about the integration of sustainability from a learning outcomes perspective to content, activities, and assessment, and making sure that these components are well integrated, and that sustainability is not just an add-on or a specific session within a module or a specific module within a program. So we support this more integrated approach, and I do believe that partnership is really key to achieve that as well, bringing colleagues from different disciplines together to co-design modules, interdisciplinary modules, and programs.
Thank you, Vili, very much. And I couldn't agree more. And there's some really interesting conversation in the chat as well around exactly what you're saying. And it's very much the how we're teaching students and the ways in which we are equipping them, often in a or in my personal opinion, it should be in a co-constructed way, so that they have the tools to apply to all sorts of different scenarios, the wicked problems that we face, regardless of discipline there in particular. And that was a question we had a lot ahead of the panel today. How can I bring sustainability into insert discipline here? And that for me is a really interesting angle. And a number of people have kindly shared Advanced HE's guidance around education for sustainable development in the chat, which very much frames it that way. It's the head, heart, and hands. It's as much as we are equipping our students with that understanding rather than the information as such. So I agree entirely. And forgive me, Faria, I excuse me, just wanted to ask your thoughts there as well, in terms of, in your learning journey as a public health student, was there any teaching in and around sustainability that you found really interesting or inspiring, or indeed not? And it's okay, you're at the University of Manchester with me, that's very all right, don't worry, I'm on your side here. But I'm interested to learn, was there anything that you thought that got you into sustainability, or that you thought there should have been more of?
Yeah, so for me on my degree, which is public health, I kind of, in our first year, we had one guest lecture by someone who worked in climate and sustainability, and the kind of summary of that lecture was that the world was ending. And I really did not enjoy it, because it was very much kind of doom and gloom. The world is ending, there's not much we can do. There were climate disasters happening everywhere, floods and hurricanes and all sorts. But I kind of wish that it was more kind of, as everyone mentioned, integrated into our course. I think there was so much opportunity for it to be useful to public health and applied to my discipline that wasn't there, which was a real shame. I think students in particular kind of appreciate that real life application, as everybody's mentioned, because again, even within the kind of digital room we're in now, everyone's quite biased. We're all interested, and that's why we're here. But I think when you're trying to engage people who don't have that natural interest, who aren't going to start volunteering with an organisation, who aren't going to put their hand up to speak for things, I think it's putting it in the terms of things that they are interested in. I think for a lot of young people as well, it's that kind of opportunity to have social impact. Sometimes it's activism impact. Sometimes your mates are going to a rally and you just go along with them, and then you get hooked in through that, which is completely fine. And I think loads of young people do want to make a difference, and sustainability is a really easy way, and it's something that they're going to well, they're probably going to have to do anyway in their own disciplines. And kind of, as everybody mentioned, integrating it into the course and making it useful and more personalized, I think is a really great way of hooking people in and kind of showing them the opportunity to get involved with sustainability. I find that kind of focusing on natural disasters and things, while very relevant for certain degree disciplines, it isn't always the most relevant, just because I think it can contribute to that kind of fear and eco-anxiety that already exists for a lot of people. And I think when you kind of frame it in this way of there's nothing that can be done, it's just going to result in death, kind of it can add to that fear and then make people less likely to engage with it, just because it's such a kind of difficult topic and nobody wants to go into a discipline or get interested in something that's going to end badly anyway, are they? So I think it's that real life application of kind of sustainability, framing it in either, for example, like a fashion way, if that's your degree, framing it as a career prospect opportunity. I know for me, it's kind of a niche that I want to go into when I graduate. I kind of want to find that link between public health and sustainability and see how I can pursue that in my local area. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I know for a lot of my peers, if I was to mention the career prospect, they would definitely be more interested than, other reasons why I'm interested. I think kind of reflecting on what Vili said as well, it's that opportunity to be heard as well. I think within higher education, students really appreciate opportunities to get involved and to be working with staff on that kind of co-lead level. So I think presenting those opportunities is another really good way to kind of boost student engagement with that, and for students to feel connected to kind of sustainability as well. Like I know with me, I'm going to be working with Jen over summer on an internship, and although that's paid, even if it was voluntary, I still probably would have applied. I mean, don't take away my pay, please, Jen, but but at the same time, even if it was voluntary, I still probably would have applied, because it is an interest there and it's the opportunity to work with someone in higher education on development of stuff, which is just not what I'm going to get to do as part of my undergraduate degree. So I think if within your own kind of settings, you have the opportunity to work with students, and if you don't know how to kind of add that integration into your course and how you can bring it into kind of, psychology or fashion or whatever it might be, ask your students, because I promise you they will have seen it and they will have heard about it. Because sustainability is something that's booming in the media as well, kind of there's so much interest from young people in sustainable fashion, sustainable beauty, sustainable technology, and kind of there's a lot more visibility of like social responsibility of where you buy your products. And obviously that is kind of quite product based, but I promise you that your students will know about the link between their own discipline and sustainability, and they would probably really appreciate getting to help develop some of their course units and things like that as well. So I think there's a massive opportunity for kind of co-leadership on that, and kind of what Vili was saying as well, that partnership aspect. And it can be really daunting, I think, from a staff perspective, kind of giving that power to students, because you kind of give them that voice, but then you don't always want to hear what they have to say. But I think it's a really good opportunity as well to kind of enrich your course a lot more, and kind of make it more relevant to like what's actually happening now, rather than the perspective that you may have had from kind of a while ago when you originally went into it. But to kind of summarize, I think students are really interested in that real life impact, and naturally a lot of students are kind of more aware of sustainability and the climate challenges, and I think integration of what you're doing into your course is really important, but also giving students the opportunity to contribute to that, I think will empower them more and kind of help you as well, and potentially take time off of your hands, kind of like reduce your workload if you can literally get them to do it for you, which I promise you they will want to do. But yeah.
Amazing, thank you. The chat is going wild for you here, Farah. It's really wonderful, thank you. And if I may, I'm jumping across questions a little bit, but you've picked up on something that I'd like to ask you, if I may, and I'm going to open up to the rest of the panel as well. One of the things that I personally really struggle with in my teaching is getting the pitch right for sustainability, and that balance around telling the truth, to quote Extinction Rebellion, in a way that is giving hope and it's empowering, but it's also being realistic. And I'm sure many of you have seen the research that came out of Bath University recently that suggests, I think it's 40% of all young people globally are living with quite diagnosed eco-anxiety. And trying to find that balance can be really difficult. Do you have any guidance there on how we can communicate sustainability in a way that is that is right from your perspective? Farah, I'm coming to you first here. Come on, you're the key voice today.
Yeah, so I think for me, kind of in terms of like eco-anxiety and that kind of thing, I think framing sustainability as everybody's problem and not as an individual's problem really, really helps. I think the minute you start to dissolve kind of accountability and spread it as everybody's responsibility, it really helps. And kind of telling your students as well that it isn't their individual responsibility, it's everybody's, and kind of that puts more focus onto politicians, the UN, you know, people in your local authorities, that kind of thing as well, which I think is really, really important, just that kind of visibility and transparency of what goes on. Because a lot of it is kind of, as you'll kind of know, there are a lot of kind of key players who do a lot and then who do a lot to make things worse, but don't do as much to kind of mitigate the issues. So I think having that kind of accountability and sending the message that it is everybody's job and that there are key players in it and that it's a very much like a politicized thing is really, really important just for transparency. And I think there are also so many examples, kind of as everybody's mentioned, that you can use to frame things positively. Kind of there are so many kind of champions of sustainability, like kind of everybody I'm talking to today, that you can kind of reflect on and use as examples. I think there are so many negative examples, but it's so easy to find local examples that are relevant to your area and your geography that are positive as well. Even the negative stuff, I think keeping it very relevant is always the most kind of useful thing and just keeping it quite down to earth. But I'd say mainly kind of that framing of sustainability as something that everybody is accountable for, I think is really, really useful for me, and especially kind of for people of my age group. I think they're quite interested in kind of that accountability of politicians and things, and it's very much something that is in the media for various reasons. So it's something that's kind of, I guess, trendy in a way as well, that resonates quite well with people.
Brilliant, thank you. Would anyone else like to pick up on that question? This challenge of getting pitch right in sustainability teaching and learning. Kath, do you want to come in there?
I would, because it's something we're thinking about so much now, because we're moving onto a new living lab on climate adaptation and how students can be part of efforts to help their communities become more resilient to climate change that's already occurring, how they can be part of understanding and addressing global injustices that are being heightened by climate change. And so the framing of that is really challenging. It's more challenging than looking at the food system. And I think what we've really realized from all of our work so far with students is that students really do know that this is serious, and any apparent lack of interest is usually more of a feeling of there's just no point. I only hear about how terrible this is and how everything's been stitched up by the global economy and I just need to survive. So that really underlines the need for positive stories, but locally and globally. And I've shared some examples of those in the chat where we find those, some amazing podcasts and so on. But the framing of that, I think, has to start from a place of real honesty. It has to start from we are out of the safe zone. The climate is in it now an increasingly chaotic state, and we need to accept that normal is over. And from that point, where do we go forward? How do we go forward as communities, and how do we build community resilience? How do we actually find transformative potential and a sense of purpose in an acceptance of that, an acceptance of crisis? And I think it is about moving quickly onto, right, what's happening here around us in York? Who are the organisations who are doing amazing work on that? What do they need? What's limiting them? What can you, in your assessed module as a live brief, bring to a local organisation that is helping vulnerable people adapt to the consequences of climate change? What can you, in your global tourism module, bring to the question of, you know, can you build a website for an organisation in the global south which is trying to innovate community level projects to help people cope with the impacts of climate change? So I think it really is that. It's starting from a place of acceptance and honesty, and then looking for the transformative potential within that.
Wonderful, thank you, Kath. I love the idea of a place of honesty and acceptance. That's brilliant. Billy and Charlene, is there anything that you'd like to add to that one, sort of how we get this pitch right? And it's really interesting. I hadn't realised that that question would then pull upon these broader questions of how you bring sustainability into your different disciplines. And I love this idea of seeing what is happening in your nearby area, what you can learn from, and who you can work with in that space. So Billy, you've come in there. What would you like to add?
Sure. So I echo what has been said already. That's not an area that I have engaged with that much, but it's certainly a very important area. I think the approach that I take is also being honest, but equally making sure that there is a positive atmosphere so that my students and colleagues are enabled to take action. So I think we should definitely focus on not creating a negative environment that can paralyze action, but empowering colleagues. In my modules and in my teaching, I like to see myself as a facilitator. So typically the key ideas come from my colleagues and the participants of the modules I teach. And I use the word participants because my students are actually colleagues working in higher education or professionals working in other industries or professional contexts. So the ideas primarily come from them. And then if I can see that there is a kind of a negative spin to what they say, then I try to direct the discussion into something more positive or thinking about how to make responsible actions. So I don't have much to add to that other than that I try to facilitate discussions and ensuring that there is a kind of a positive atmosphere in the learning environment. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. But I think honesty is also really key because it's not about hiding what's going on. That's definitely not the answer to this question. But equally making sure that the environment is empowering and people feel that they have agency to do something about that and change.
Oh, that's amazing, Billy. Thank you. And very much links back, and someone's kindly shared it in the chat, that idea of the competencies that we need in sustainability teaching, which is as significant to our colleagues who are teaching as well as the learners there. And I love this construct of students being genuine partners. And perhaps that also speaks a bit to the number of people who said, how much climate science do I need to know? And certainly this is what I found. My students know a lot more than I do, and particularly mindful of the interdisciplinarity and even the different backgrounds of our students. I am challenged on a daily basis of my own personal definitions of sustainability and what the futures are there, when it's such a very individually but also co-constructed concept. Charlene, was there anything you wanted to add to that idea of sort of empowerment and voice?
Conversation. So everything that everybody said is absolutely amazing, and it does, you know, it's how we inform our practice as well within our Department of Materials. All I could add to that is it's just about really understanding that you can't know everything about sustainability, and you know, as an overarching construct, it's incredibly diverse. So it's about identifying something within sustainability from a T&L standpoint, from a teaching and learning standpoint, or from an applied standpoint that you can confidently engage students in. This antiquated way of pushing information onto students within lectures is obsolete, isn't it, really? The way that, you know, what you've just said about you are a facilitator of the student learning journey. I think that's just a wonderful way of positioning our new role within the education system. Students are collaborators now. They're collaborating across different disciplines. They're collaborating with industry as well. And you know, the things that we really encourage is that industry engagement. So we have within our programme, we encourage a number of industry people to come and give guest talks on a regular basis, to actually record content, which we use then to kind of enrich our programme, for example. You know, we encourage students to access open educational resources. So, for example, one of the one of the incredible resources I use is called the Slow Factory, and that has a range of resources that could be applied across different disciplines, not just from a fashion context. So across psychology, across geography, everything. It's really about climate activism. And there's some fantastic learning resources and podcasts and journal articles that you could actually just encourage students to interrogate and then use that as a form to discuss. I think what's essential is that we encourage students to think critically, to not just accept the status quo, to understand that they have the autonomy and the agency to be disrupting and to questioning and to challenge everything now. And they have a platform, they have social media, and they can actively do that. So I think, you know, I do feel really optimistic about, you know, the future and how we are equipping the new generation, if you will, to go out in the world and make that positive change as well. So.
Jen, can I just come in very briefly about this idea of partnership with students? I think it's also about what we provide, like the tissue connectings, the different subjects, and the kind of general working with students together to co-create things that they can get involved with outside modules as well, so that we're making invitations on all sorts of different levels, because you can invite students to do their assess project or their dissertation on a sustainability topic. Some will take that invitation and others won't. So can you make also other invitations at different levels? We have a working group of staff and students who anybody can come from the whole university. So we have like a core of people who democratically run and make decisions about the Living Lab and what kind of initiatives it should develop outside the curriculum. So we're working at the moment on community gardening and on a student-led cafe, and on a really big thing for our students is being more involved in decision-making on campus, so in people's assemblies that are like democratic exercises to make decisions, to help the campus make decisions about, you know, should the cost of food go up in the canteen to enable higher sustainability, or should food poverty be a higher priority? We'll take those sorts of things. Or if students bring concerns about skills, you know, we don't have skills for sustainability, they'll say, well, I wish you could come to help us, Charlene. We're going to be learning a lot of mending, repair skills. So there's even that, there's that entry level engagement, the engagement with the hands, that just being part of conversations, even for students who don't feel quite ready to take everything on at once. And I think we can just be easy on ourselves. If not all of our students feel able to take that invitation all the time, they'll have a reason. If they can't, it'll be that there's something more important for them, and we can keep on. Somebody talked about the iceberg. We can give them different levels of hook to hook onto this iceberg of the climate emergency.
No, I entirely agree, Kath, and somebody kindly shared the Vogel summary of literature into the chat, which very much takes that 4-level approach of how can we get students involved in different ways, whether it's co-curricular, extracurricular as part of their core learning. But also massively mindful and not for a second undermining the approach of working in partnership with students, but also that our students are really busy, and many of you, the cost of living crisis, they're commuting, they're traveling, they've got all sorts of different things happening, and it's just mindful we're not saying that students are the complete answer, because they're narrow shoulders to put this responsibility on as well. So I couldn't agree more, sort of finding that balance there. We've got just last couple of minutes to wrap up, and there are some amazing suggestions, resources. I have to confess to being completely energized by the amazingness of this morning. So absolutely our panelists, and also all of the different resources that are coming through in the chat, and a number of people saying, I can't keep on top of it all. And I absolutely agree, and we'll pull it all together and we'll share it round. And what an incredible opportunity then to bring together all sorts of different minds, disciplines, areas, countries, backgrounds, experiences, which to my mind is absolutely who we need to be and where we need to go in sustainability, and learning from that good practice, seeing what's already happening, developing together. There's some great organisations coming through. Advanced HE has been mentioned, EAUC. I appreciate very UK dominated, but also they are applicable to different education systems as well. To end on a takeaway in the last couple of minutes, if you each had a top tip to people who are starting their sustainability teaching and learning agenda from different perspectives, students, practitioners, academics, what would it be? And we've got maybe 30 seconds apiece if we go round. Farah, I'm going to end on you if that's all right. You're going to have the final word today. Who'd like to go first? 30 seconds to a minute of each. One top tip.
I could go first. I think collaborate with colleagues and students is really vital. And I mean students and colleagues in a wider sense, not only within your discipline, but also across disciplines. And by colleagues, I mean also including colleagues working in industry as well. So collaboration is really key in partnerships.
Brilliant, thank you. Collaboration. Charlene, what would be your top tip?
I was going to say collaboration.
Brilliant, that's okay.
Just be open to new ideas, and know that you don't have all the answers, and try and identify key stakeholders who could help kind of bring it all together, and know that you are part of something bigger, larger than yourself. And, you know, we need to stop moving away from this individualistic way of working and actually know that we are a collective. So.
Thank you. Kath, what would your top tip be?
I'm going to say it's about stories, that it's much less about expertise and statistics and much more about looking for the stories that are already in the room, already in your students' lives, in your own life, but also that you can bring in from other people's lives, or that you can enact together and then tell the story back to the institution. We are a university that does this and that made this change, and students and staff did that together. Storytelling.
Thank you. And Farah, from your perspective, what would be your top tip to people that are thinking about engaging with students in sustainability teaching and learning?
I think my tip would be to use existing motivations when working with your students or your colleagues, or trying to raise a voice in your organisation. I think it can be really difficult trying to get your organisation on board with things sometimes. They don't see the value in it. So trying to use those existing motivations and trying to kind of that collaboration aspect of trying to link with the people in the right places to make as much of a difference as you can, although it's not all on your shoulders as well.
Thank you very much. Gail, is there anything else that we need to wrap up with?
No, I just want to thank you all so much. This was fascinating. I too have struggled to keep up with the comments and the incredible resources and stories from around the world, and the examples have been coming thick and fast. I can't tell you how incredibly inspiring it is to listen to you all, and to know that our students, our next set of students, are in safe hands, and that students like you, Fariha, are coming out and actually going into fields which will change the way that the world works, we hope. So really what's left for me is to say we will follow up, we will share the recording, we will do whatever we can to make sure you can reconnect. And that's really it for me. But just thank you, Jen, for leading, and thank you everybody for taking the time out of your day to listen now or to catch up later. Thank you all.